Welcome to another edition of Irish Illustrated Insider. It is Monday, August 11th. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated and John Bryce of Football Scoop. Guys, we had no longer rare. It's about to be commonplace until the game number one starts, but Sunday access had about 20 minutes yesterday inside. But we also want to talk about a scrimmage that happened last Friday night, or about 72 hours ago, at School Field in South Bend. Tim and John, you guys remember we were privy to that one a couple years ago.
We
No longer.
were.
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
Quick update though, there was two notable happenings from Sunday's open viewing. Jaden Greathouse back in action after either head and neck concussion issue, and Gabriel Rubio back after undisclosed reasons. And I think those are the two guys we were looking for. Pretty sure it's nice to. I keep
Yeah.
forgetting people's numbers, like Jordan Faison and Jaden Greathouse keep changing on me, and I was like, wait, there's Greathouse. No, that's Faison, and you corrected me on that one. So.
Yeah. I had a couple extra days working to work with that TO. But yeah, I think some of the things, and JB will chime in here too, but I think some of the things that we have been hearing on the practice field is, and this isn't a surprise, and it's not a bad thing if one has to be ahead of the other, but the defense is ahead of the offense. And I think that that's generally going to be the case when you have a young quarterback, maybe unless his name is Trevor Lawrence or somebody like that. But I'd rather have it that way going into Miami. And there's certainly time to bridge the gap, and you still have a really good offensive line with running backs and some you've got some receivers I think that can play, and you just got to get the young quarterbacks to get into their hands any way that they can, and I think that will straighten itself out. But defense ahead offense, not surprising, the way it should be. That I think the way you want it to be if you have to choose between the two.
Yeah, and defense, even though you have a new coordinator, you bring back a lot of experience over there, so it does make sense to an extent that the defense would be a little ahead of pace at this point in time. I think we all know that continues to be a real quarterback competition from everyone I've spoken with that's inside the program that's been at some practices as well. It seems to be pretty even. So noticed yesterday Joe Rudolph really getting after his offensive line. We also heard Chris Ash absolutely getting after his entire defensive unit. Even though it was just 20 minutes or so that we were inside the walls, and even though it was 2 days removed from their scrimmage at school field, and so they were in shells and not full pads. But and one other thing I noticed yesterday, no, Aeneas Williams not practicing, had a pretty significant sleeve on his right arm. I think from talking with people, he got his elbow banged up in Friday night scrimmage work at school field.
Yeah, that opens a door for a guy we hear only good things about right now in Nolan James. It's the Nolan James and Jabron Payne. And of course, Payne's thing is always staying healthy just because he's had the two. He had, people forget he had two knee injuries. That was
Mhm.
part of He had an injury before getting to South Bend. But Nolan James, man, we liked him on film, and
I'm here, man. I'm
everybody
here.
everybody keeps hearing, like, not everybody, the three of us and others, I'm sure, keep hearing good things about Nolan James.
I had it emphasized to me again since yesterday. What's he listed at? He is
Smaller.
we said small. I've never JB, you said small. I've never really considered him to be that small. I know he's 5'10. He's now 215.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what you're saying. As a freshman comes in early and you look at him and it's like, but I think that kid's put together pretty well. I think he's a good football player. I like if you would have said 3 weeks ago that, or let's say 2 weeks ago, that in 2 weeks we're going to tell you that Nolan James is in the running to get some playing time. I don't know how bad Aeneas Williams is. I'm not wishing anything upon him, but Kedron Young is out. Jabron Payne is, like you said, Tim, still coming back. Nolan James Jr., we could see him this year.
Yeah, he looked really small in spring. You can
Oh
tell
yeah,
Yeah,
he
he
bulked
was. I
up.
talked to him in the spring. He was small.
Yeah, but yeah, he's one of the buzzier guys that we're hearing about, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Um, you wonder how quickly Aeneas Williams tries to get back to a full practice workload,
Yeah.
because my understanding James is surging in that depth chart.
Well, that'll get you back quickly. And of course, the door opening Priester mentioned Kedron Young out for basically the year with a torn ACL. And I would think he's out for the year because unlike Charles Jogg you saw in the emergency situation last year, you're not probably turning to a running back who's never played before when you have all the other guys there in the
Yeah.
semis or championship game. Kevin Bauman, as we hinted, did end up medically retiring for yet another knee injury. And that brings up, I think we'll talk about this in segment 2, but there goes one tight end that they banked on to be able to help out Eli Raridan. It wasn't going to be a guy that if Eli Raridan twists his ankle, comes in and takes over for Eli Raridan, but they had Bauman as part of their plan of 12 package, especially because Ty Washington, shouldn't say this again because it was said by Mike Denbrock very early in camp, but he gave him the old, he is learning how we do things conversation. And whenever that happens, you got to read between the lines a little. So Bauman hurts the depth. This sounds weird. He hurts the depth more than Kedron Young does.
Oh, that's true. I mean, just
Kedron Young wasn't going to play like Bauman was.
No. And how often do we say that, wow, Notre Dame's shorthanded at tight end, but they are. And this is where
you've pointed out Cooper Flanagan is part of the reason.
A tough break there. And, John and I talked about James Flanagan on instant analysis yesterday. I mean, you got to fast track that kid. He's probably not strong enough yet to be an inline blocker, but I think he can do some things for you in the passing game. He's got to do, blocking technique will get you a long way, even if you're a little bit, lacking in strength. And again, what we have updated weights. I didn't expect. He's 241. He's 6'6", 241. For 6'6", maybe that's a little light for an inline blocking tight end. But I think we're going to see him. I don't think that they really have much choice there. And I do want to say this, yesterday, Jason Onye and Donovan Heinisch were with the number one defense. And look, we only get to see practice sporadically, so we don't know how much rotation is going on between today your first team and tomorrow your second team. But I think maybe Jason Onye is in a position to earn a starting job, and Heinisch is a veteran there. I would assume, Onye is going to play more over the center. None of those guys are.
The way Heinisch talked about it, I think he might be playing over the center a little more now.
Man, that's amazing. That's amazing at 277, and a self-proclaimed guy who relies upon his quickness, where he says his brother was a little bit more solid and
yes,
he relied more on his strength. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit. Maybe you can fluctuate a little bit or alternate. I don't know exactly because we just haven't seen enough live stuff. But I think Jason Onye is on a pretty fast track here, and if that's legit, that is huge because if he can put it all together, that's a hell of a body they put out there in the middle of their defensive line.
Yeah, and Onye has bulked up to 302, but he looks good with that weight and doesn't seem to be affecting how well he's able to move or go through some of the drills. And as for James Flanagan, you noted TP that he's got to be fast tracked a little bit with the Bauman news, but the indications from campus are he's fast tracking himself. He is a very willing blocker, and he is not afraid of the physicality. So obviously he's going to continue to add muscle and heft to his frame, but they really like what they're seeing so far out of James Flanagan. And remember, he's one of the guys that Marcus talked to us about in May that they knew would help right away or believed would help right away, and he's certainly on that track and really long-armed.
I'm not saying that Rubio and Dawson aren't. I mean, those are integral parts of your interior defensive line.
Yeah, but I think Tim. I mean, our intel is that it's Heinisch and Onye are ones. They're not twos. The problem is not the problem. The question is, does ones mean 35 snaps versus 30?
Right.
Or the backups,
Probably.
Rubio and Dawson? Probably. If ones means 42 versus 20, that's what surprises me. I mean, if Gabriel Rubio missed time, he's not beating out Heinisch or Jason Onye if they've been here the whole camp. He hasn't played enough football. You can't keep missing time and have a new coordinator and your defensive line coach that knows you missed time beat you out. And Dawson's rarely started college football games. None of these guys have, but it's not a strange thing. I would have predicted Dawson earning one of the two spots. I think all three of us probably would have. But if it's 35 snaps versus 30, it's just going to have a listing, and the people on the message board are going to say, I can't believe he beat him out. Well, they trust him a little bit more, and the rotation is what it is. It's the same at linebacker. I mean, they're 1A and 1B at linebacker.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think Elijah Hughes, I think, is fifth.
Yeah.
And then I think Mookum is probably a little bit of a distant number 6.
Yeah, he's like, you figure if it's hot against Purdue,
Yeah.
You get some Mookum in there in high leverage situations. It's hard to play a sixth defensive tackle in Miami at Miami, the number 10 team in the country with a good offensive line, and you can't afford a loss. I just don't know if they go to that.
Yeah.
But
Very, very good offensive line. Very
yeah,
good
and the
offensive line.
point is, Mookum should be able to help you this year as you progress. I can't imagine rolling out sixth line. If they do, then they have faith in him. 5 snaps in the first half means total faith.
Yeah.
It's We did talk to actually before we go to the conversation from yesterday, we had Max Bulla and Mike Brown and the linebackers and receivers. We should mention Elijah Golden is official. It seems like a very long time ago. It was only Saturday, but it's pretty big, very important for the recruiting position. I'm going to turn it over to you, Tim. But when you asked me to do a depth chart impact, reviving the old depth chart impact from the past before the portal took over our depth charts, I found a disturbing trend in Notre Dame's interior defensive line. In 17, 18, 19, and 20, true freshmen played and did not redshirt. In 21, 22, 23, and 24, true freshmen redshirted.
Wow.
They need someone like Elijah Golden to come in. You don't have to start. You don't have to be great, but you have to be the Elijah Hughes of next year. Is that fair? Hey,
Yeah, I
Golden's
think
number
so.
5, and then you know he's going to play.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's fair. And I think that, I mean, I tried to be as extremely fair in my film review of him. And I do believe that he has a chance to be a really good football player. And I think that he's got the makeup and the skill set and the size, the frame to play in the NFL, but he's got to get his pad level down. And he's just a raw football player right
Yeah.
now. I think I'm not accusing anything, but I think it's up to the Cardinal Mooney coaching staff to do this kid a solid and really get his technique, because he doesn't, it's not like he lines up high. He's got a really nice low 3-point stance, but his instinct is to stand straight up and try to battle somebody
That's
with his
fast.
upper body. Yeah. Cardinal Mooney plays a good schedule, I'm sure, and he's bounced around. He's bounced around. It's his third different place. This is the first time he's been at the same school 2 years in a row since he got to high school. So I'd really like to see that improve, but Al Washington will coach him up. There's a lot to work with. And that's that commitment kind of was ho hum. Practice has already started.
Yeah.
But that's a massive commitment,
Yes, it
both
is.
in terms of value and the size of the kid. So that's great. I mean, I'm glad they got him. I won't mention the people are giving me a hard time about Vallejo. I don't
Well, you
have
mentioned
any.
him. You mentioned him right
Yeah,
there.
I
There we
know,
go.
but I don't
Drink,
have
everybody.
any intel that he's going to leave Michigan. But anyway, Elijah Gold's a good one. Chance to be really, really good.
As I mentioned, we spoke with Max Bulla, Mike Brown, and I had some time with Bulla, who is just one of the more entertaining coaches to talk to on Notre Dame staff. And we had a question about that, and I didn't include it, but he's one of the more on recent staffs too. He loves being a linebacker, and he has a 4-man rotation right now. He has said it out loud, and he said someday someone, hopefully number 5, will earn his way in like last year. But he has 100% trust in the tandems of Bowen and Viliamuasa and Snead and Osbury. And I thought, talking to those guys yesterday, you can tell that that group is locked and loaded.
JB.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard me say it on this podcast numerous times, especially those four linebackers are an SEC type linebacking unit or on par with anybody in the country. They're good, they're athletic, they've got great football IQ among them, especially with Jaden Osbury and Drake Bowen, and then just sheer athleticism with Snead and a combination of all of that with KVA. And so I think those are it's a great position for Notre Dame. You do want the rigors of a season, the specter of potentially playing 16 games again. You want that fifth person to step up. Drake Bowen saying yesterday that Madden Fereo is the youngest guy who's being absorbing the most right now, or trying to be a sponge the most to Bowen's knowledge. And certainly we know that Madden is a very physical presence. He's just got to marry that physicality with his knowledge and command of the playbook and the defense in general.
And it's I talked to Bulla about Feremo, and he quickly went to Rizak because they're paired a lot together. You guys remember in the spring, he said Rizak is an absolute football savant. He likes pairing them together, assuming they both earned it, which they have. He likes pairing them together in the third unit because he says I can actually trust Rizak over there to make calls when they're two spotting. He has a third string linebacker he can trust to make calls next
Wow.
to Feremo, which is going to bring the incredibly talented freshman up. So Rizak will be a special teams mainstay this year. He's probably not a guy that's working that way into number 5, but it's important to have those guys that know what they're doing because that's how you bring along Madden Feremo.
Yeah, Rizek 6'3", 220. That's a little light,
Fast,
right
though.
now.
They
Yeah.
talk about how fast he
Oh,
is.
there's no doubt about it. He has a great future. But yeah, talking to Max Bulla about Madden Feremo, and he said, he's on pace to know everything. There's a lot to know, but he's on pace to know everything that by mid-season,
Right.
he could be rotated in like they did with 5 last year. And he said, if you're ready, I'm going to play you. I mean,
Well,
and he when Bulla says that, he's telling the truth.
oh yeah. I think Bryce said last August by now KVA is in, and pretty sure you make a good point. Madden Feremo will be in eventually. That's kind of
Yeah.
how it is. That's the difference. KVA was the 5th by now. Like
Right.
no doubt he was in. Viliamu Asa for people who don't know who KVA is in case you're on the football team listening. But I think Feremo as the season progresses, Tim, would be call October call up for baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that I think it's going to be really interesting at linebacker because I think that it's difficult to take Drake Bowen and Billy Amuasa off the
I know.
field,
Yeah. I think
and
Chris Ash just told people it's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, we know. I mean, you talk about Rizak as a savant. I think you can say Billy Amuasa was a savant
Yes.
when he walked in here. And Bullis said the other day, he's like he picked everything up right away. And that you just a lot of times you just don't know when that's going to happen. I'm sure the coaches do because they know those kids better than we do when they come in. But it's going to be really interesting because Jalen Sneed, I think, is ready to play his best football. I just think some of it's going to have to be off the edge, which is fine.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great role for him. But I think there are going to be times where it's like one of those backup linebackers may be itching to get in the game because it's going to be hard to take Bowen and KVA off the field. KVA.
I did ask Paul about that for game 1, just saying, is your rotation more deliberate because it could be 88 degrees with 95% humidity? And he said, yes, it's a unique situation for game 1. I may just have to rotate those 4 because it's time. I think to myself, okay, rotate. I need fresh legs. Whereas sometimes, like if Bowen and Sneed are just dominating in there together as the starters the first series, you don't think I got to rotate. But he said he has enough trust in all 4 of them where he can rotate them. Pretty sure you make a good point about Sneed coming off the edge, but that's KVA's going to come off the edge too.
No doubt. No doubt.
I
He's
mean,
really good
Bowen
at it.
talked about it.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
thought
they offered it.
I wrote a Bowen feature this morning. I thought that was interesting because on one hand he's talking about everything that he learned from Bertrand and Kaiser, and then the couple sentences later he's saying, "Well, I've tried to learn from KVA when it comes to coming off the edge, and a lot of that is God given or developed to the ability to bend." JB, we were talking about that yesterday. I mean, the ability to bend off the edge. Uh, I guess you can teach it to some extent, but I also think it's a bit of a genetic thing too. And KVA has it. So you have 2 linebackers that can come off the edge. Now you're pretty dangerous on the second level as well.
Yeah, and especially a good point on having a couple of different linebackers who can come off the edge. And then on top of that, you've got improved depth at the defensive edge position, and you really like your players there as well. Burnham having a good camp, Bryce Young coming on continually, Logan Thomas has added some weight. So it's not just 1 or 2 guys that are going to give Notre Dame a chance to do some stuff off the edge. They've got a handful of candidates to impact the game that way. I think, again, that's testament to the roster that Marcus Freeman has built and the depth and how much better that depth is. And I would just quickly note on Kingston that to me, he reminds me defensively of Jaden Greathouse without how he arrived as such a prepared football player. And so those are 2 of the guys that really stick out to me that you knew coming in they would play as freshmen. Greathouse had to some extent because the wide receiver depth wasn't there, but he was just so well prepared coming in. Kingston really similar in that regard, in my opinion.
And Tim,
I don't want to belabor this point, Tim, because I want to get to the receivers. But I have to say that I talked to everyone except KVA yesterday among the linebackers, and he might have said it too. But without being prompted, Osbury, Sneed, Bulla, and Bowen talked about Kaiser or Bertrand or both. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's what you need out of that's why another reason you need Bowen to stay for next year for more reasons than a leadership perspective. You want him on the field, but like that's unique that those guys would just offer those names right now. They're well beyond that. They're beyond having to learn
No,
from
they
Jack
are.
Kaiser and
Yeah.
JD Bertrand.
And getting back to a point you made previously, talking about guys, linebackers coming off the edge, that could be a time, and I haven't seen it, but that could be a time where you bump Bryce Young inside, which you
Yes,
mentioned
that's
before.
I wrote about that, and I'm just trying to put that into existence
Have
in
you
practice
seen that,
reports.
JB? Or you heard
Uh,
something about that?
Well, I was going to say one more person that I think they will deploy off the edge from time to time, or they did Friday night, Devontae Smith. So they love his physicality, and I think that's another wrinkle we should certainly be on the lookout for as the season unfolds.
Wide receiver, we've gotten great feedback on Malachi Fields and Will Pauling. Kudos to Drew Mentok ranking Will Pauling 23rd because we are all behind number 23, and I think he's going to finish higher than number 23 in the postseason, which is really good news. Tim, the work ethic conversations they throw out there, you talk to Faison, we talked to Brown, they talk about Will Pauling's work ethic. I think Faison said, it doesn't matter how early I'm here, Will Pauling is here. And people forget he was a captain at Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean a tough kid. Everybody calling him a dog and sleeping in the goo, which JB informed me of yesterday during incident analysis that I wasn't aware of. I mean that's all great stuff, and you know, I mean Mike Brown couldn't have said it any faster when I said, "What does Malachi Fields bring to the
Yeah.
equation?" And he said leadership, which is fantastic, great size. I mean, I just think that apparently Bo Collins has done some good things with the Giants, I believe, this preseason. But this guy, and nobody's automatic, but I think this guy is. I mean, I just loved his film. I just loved his film. And JB and I talked about on the incident analysis yesterday. He says if the officials called that pass to him last year complete, then they made the right decision. The Virginia game against Notre
Yes.
Dame we're referring
Yeah.
to.
Quickly following up there on Pauling, as we shared on yesterday's instant analysis, but he did tell me that his teammates have nicknamed him the Goog Rat because he is to sleep overnight in the Goog. And I asked Mike Brown, and he pretty much said, yeah, there have been some mornings that Will Pauling has beaten all the coaches into the office, and he told me he's definitely been in there as early as 5:30, 5:45 on the nights that he's not slept in there, but taking very seriously his final year of college football, emphasizing that to me, and just really wanting to lay it all out there. And then I would just follow up that. So we kind of know the top four as
Right.
being
Yeah.
Fields, Pauling, Greathouse, and Faison. Continue to hear really, really good things about Elijah Burris, Logan Saldate, and Micah Gilbert. I think that probably would be the top seven right now. If that would be my inference on talking to people. Burris again had another touchdown the other night. I think Gilbert maybe had a big play, if not a touchdown. Saldate was really good in the stadium and maybe had another key catch on Friday night, according to some people I talked to. So Mike Brown said yesterday he wants a six-man wide receiver rotation, and that last year 8 guys had carved out or earned the right to be in the rotation and to make it an 8-man rotation. But clear he likes playing six, and he'll play a seventh if that guy demands it with his work ethic on the field through the week.
You guys want to hear my theory on the next man in out of Gilbert and Burris? The other receivers besides Fields and Gilbert play two positions. That gives Burris a chance to sub in at two positions.
Mhm.
Micah Gilbert is the backup to Malachi Fields. So he has to come in when Fields needs a blow, but that gets you in the game. It actually gets you in the game because Malachi Fields shouldn't be playing 75 snaps at Miami. So you want to have Micah Gilbert ready. And Tim, he looks different. I'm sorry. I know the intel is great on both of those guys, Gilbert and Burris. I've only really been able to focus on Gilbert in my one time. I've been on defensive fields here more often than not. Gilbert looked powerful and aggressive in those in those red zone drills we were watching.
I kind of like I think I unfairly kind of expected that from him last year, thinking in terms of Greathouse and knowing his high school background. But I mean, it's unfair to expect all freshmen to do that, even if you think that they're ready, if they have the knowledge and the physical ability. But second time through, that sounds great. KK Smith had opportunities, he just hasn't taken advantage of them. So those are, and Saldate, I didn't I think when we saw Saldate in the spring, it wasn't very impressive, but he was impressive when he came in the previous year. And
Mhm.
so now, if he's excelling, that's not a surprise. That's a nice top seven. That's seven guys that you feel are all trending up at least to some degree.
And Gilbert, interesting enough, is that he's stronger and more physical, but he's down 6 pounds from where he was a year ago going into the season at 208, now at 202. But you can tell he's added some power to his frame.
And we talked to Pauling about this to wrap up segment one, but apparently he took an absolute Ronnie Lott level shot from Adon Schuler in scrimmage and mentioned how he could not let Adon Schuler know that it hurt. So he popped right back up and he ordained Adon Schuler as one of the top trash talkers on the team after that. I think Devontae Smith and Adon Schuler might be leading that charge.
Yeah, and he was a good sport about it. I
Yeah.
was the one who had who brought it
I
up
was
to him.
there. JB started to bring it up, and Paulie broke into a laugh before he could finish the question. So
Yeah, yeah,
he
that
knew
let
he
me
got
know.
he knew
Yeah,
he got drilled, and he knew people knew about it.
and he made sure to get his comeback moment a few snaps later, but do it when the whistle hadn't blown, and he put a defender on his backside. He said, and let that do his talking for him.
I wonder who that was. We will not find out, but it's good to know he popped up after taking a big hit. More important, I like that there was a big hit that dislodged the football because that's what you want from Adon Schuler this year too. We'll be back with more in segment two, burning up the boards.
One. Segment two, burning up the boards. We start with a question from Ed E. Davis. Two, in terms of difficulty, where does Miami rank in season opener since 2015, which was Texas,
Texas at
back to
home.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, the next one, the
I have
2016 one was tougher.
that was tougher than the other Texas, even
Yeah.
going into it. It was. I
Yeah.
have them fourth behind at Ohio State, which there is no argument. At A&M, home against Michigan, at Miami, and then I don't recall enough about Texas to say at Texas or at Florida State because Florida State I feel like at Texas was a little more worrisome at the time than Florida State. They were not as good of a football team, Notre Dame. So yeah, I would say
Yeah.
at Texas was there.
I
So
can't argue those.
yeah.
Yeah, for me, it would be Ohio State number one, Michigan number two in 2018, and then I think Miami. I would put Miami above Texas A&M just because last year was first year for Mike Elko, and there wasn't. I thought there were. You knew they had good talent on defense, but I thought going in they had a lot of question marks on offense. Whereas Miami brings back, they lost a lot, but they bring back some key pieces and they have a very experienced quarterback, even if he hasn't gotten that experience playing for them. So I would have Miami as number three behind those, behind Ohio State in 2022 and then Michigan in 2018.
Can you imagine having three defensive linemen like the two Shamars and Nick Scorton last year, and you lose five times?
Well, offense.
Yeah.
So,
They
No, I
replaced their
realize
quarterback. They had to replace their quarterback. That'll kill a lot of defensive
I
line
no,
talk.
I realize that, but man, I
Yeah.
mean, my point is, I mean, that's a big time wasted opportunity up front when when you have the potential to be dominant up front defensively.
Hey, Tim, on a related note, they might have changed defensive coordinator play calling at some point too, if you want to go back
That
to that.
No, that's true, and that's a bad thing for Notre Dame that Jay Bateman will not be calling defensive signals for the Aggies in game two.
Last among the opponents in the opener would be Temple, 2017. That was not a tough one. But if you want to throw Georgia as game number two, that ended up going all the way to the national championship game, they might have been the best football team
yeah.
out of all those. The national runner-up that lost in overtime on a Devonta Smith go route touchdown. That might be the
Yeah.
best team Notre Dame played in weeks 1 or 2 over that entire stretch. For Bryce first here, maybe. Are Kenny Irish one? How do coaching staffs prepare for week one matchups? There's new players, new coaches, and schemes, and no film. And then part two of this is how would you self-scout ND, and who would be the most challenging to prepare for on the Irish, he means.
Yeah, I'll open with how the coaching staffs prepare. They talked to a lot of other coaches. Notre Dame's coaches did this in the spring. They were calling around, talking to coaches that have faced, those Miami players like Carson Beck. And obviously Notre Dame somewhat prepared for Carson Beck last year initially before it was revealed that he was going to be out. The other thing is they go and watch their film from their previous school. So, yeah, new defensive coordinator and a bunch of new assistants, but they have access to all their database through their film, usually through Exos or Catapult or one of those, and they're able to go access it and study what they've done before. But again, it's calling a lot of their colleagues around the country. I know Mike Mickens, just in general, visited with a lot of coaches, even some former SEC head coaches over the course of the summer, to try and just become a better coach, and that's a huge element of it. Yeah, there's no film of him other than a spring game that might be floating around on the ACC network, but you're going back and watching their previous stops.
It's definitely more difficult than it used to be. The transfer
Oh,
portal. I
I'm
mean,
glad you said that. Yeah. Yeah.
it forces coaches to be really creative. JB, I mean, wrote the same thing down. You make way more phone calls than you normally did. You probably have to look at a little bit of, Mike Denbrock at LSU, knowing that he wants to open things up a little bit. Now I know Notre Dame's quarterbacks are younger, but I think like somebody like CJ Carr is more accurate than Riley Leonard was, at least out of the chute. So you have to do that kind of stuff. Ash at Texas, Ash at Ohio State. I don't know how far back you go on that. And then of course, Miami has had one of the top rated transfer portal classes in the country. So you're looking at a bunch of different schools, sometimes playing a lousy team that you have to isolate on that guy to get to know. It's not kind of like, looking at film of a high school player. You have to kind of wipe out what's going around him sometimes to understand a player's technique, etc. But it's way harder than it used to be. And Notre Dame's got, you have to know what Corey Heatherman is doing, what he likes to do. There are a lot of angles to this, and none of them are easy. It's a lot of work. Good thing you have the whole summer you can't wait on that. You've got to
Yep.
start early on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and
Go
oh,
ahead,
I'm
Jimmy.
sorry, Tio. I was just going to say one quick thing I would add is that Notre Dame, along its playoff run last year, would have seen some Corey Heatherman defense on film as it prepared for Penn State because he was, of course, at Minnesota last year.
Sure.
And so I do think that's worth noting is that they would have had some familiarity with his defense a little bit to an extent by watching Minnesota in preparation for Penn State, because I believe that was Penn State's final regular season
Yeah.
game.
No, November game for sure. Yep.
Yeah, it was late November. It was
Yeah.
either the final or the penultimate contest of their regular season.
I'm glad you bring that up. I guess that means Eli Raridan's online for 15 catches and 225 yards if it's Leatherman's defense against tight ends. Or is that Tyler Warren makes that a little bit easier for you? Is that when that's how that
Yeah,
works out? Because that's what
yeah.
happened in the
Probably.
Penn State game. Tyler Warren won the game and sent them to the playoffs because he's freaking great.
They
So
could have lost that game. They could have lost that game,
Oh
man.
yeah, I mean, they were lucky. It was like 26-24 final or something like
Yeah.
that. How would you scout Notre Dame? I mean, for me, and what would be most challenging, Jeremiah Love and the two back set. Like I've said, I don't think it's an accident that we got to see several snaps of that in the one full practice we got in preseason camp. I think they like people talking about it. They want it out there that they can use it, as well as Jeremiah Love in the slot. And then, my scout for Notre Dame would be two really young quarterbacks. I'm going to stack the box and I'm going to try and rattle those quarterbacks early.
There's no doubt. I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking too, JB, about what you can do with young quarterbacks. Heatherman's got a lot to choose from when you're dealing with young quarterbacks, regardless which one it is.
I would be, and those are great points on offense. Attacking Notre Dame's defense, I would be patient in working inside zone. Very few teams are. Northern Illinois was running the football. I would push and find out what I can get there to help my down and distance, because the last thing I want is third down speed packages from Notre Dame. You guys just mentioned Kingston, Jalen Sneed, Bryce Young, Boubacar Traore, Adon Schuler, people, Devontae Smith coming up. You don't want anything to do with that. And I would do what I always say. I think Notre Dame's the better team. If I was Miami and I had a 4th and 1 at midfield and my quarterback's Carson Beck, I wouldn't want 4th and 1 to become 1st and 10 at the 49. I'd take the shot on the other safety or on Christian Gray if you have to, but that's barking
Yeah.
up the wrong tree probably. But you take a shot where you can take a shot against Notre Dame's defense too.
Yeah. We have a question from Irish from A2. Will Notre Dame be able to beat Miami with an offensive performance like they had against Texas A&M in 2024?
I love the question because right at this point, last April, not last August, we took the under in the Notre Dame A&M game, guys.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think they can. I don't think they can win it with that type of performance. I think they have to be attack a little bit more than they did.
What is the over under?
54 and a half.
I like the under.
I do too.
Yeah, I would say if you look at offensive production in the A&M game, just in terms of points, I think if Notre Dame scores 23 points, it beats Miami because I don't think Miami scores more than 20 against Notre Dame.
Would the
And
approach be the same for you though? Would you kind of back your way in with field goals and Jadarian Price and getting breaking free once and love breaking free once? Obviously, the approach isn't the same because you don't have Riley Leonard, but
right, it depends on the tenor of the game, but I would want to. It might be a game you elect to receive if you feel really good about where you're at offensively and you think you can put a march together downfield and go silence them. I don't think Marcus Freeman would do that, but it's the type of game where I would lean on my defense. And to your point, if you've got 4th and 2 at the plus 42, go for it and trust your defense, things like that. So, but I think 23 points is a point number that would win the game for Notre Dame.
I tend to agree with that. I'd like it to be 27 instead of 23, just to be safe.
I'm going to apologize to GM King 2500 here because we actually ran over this in segment one, talking about what we've heard about Nolan James. But I'm going to throw in another one that I let go. We had a little birdie say that Gerby Lambert was pushing pretty hard up front. And if you've paid attention to Notre Dame football, you would know that no one is pushing the right tackle and the left tackle right now. So, JB, where is Gerby Lambert pushing pretty hard up front?
Yeah, he's pushing really hard at the right guard position. I also think Sullivan Absher's been banged up a little bit and had to miss some practice time because of that. But we've talked about Gerby Lambert for so long, and in the spring we felt it would be hard to keep him off the field had he not had the shoulder injury that he might have earned basically a starting spot during that time. But Gerby Lambert is really, really in the thick of it there at the right guard position along the Notre Dame offensive front. And Nolan James, again, we said it in the first segment, we'll say it again. He's making a move on that depth chart. They really, really like him, and he is physical for 5'10", 215. He's very physical, and he's also another guy who's his cousin or uncle, I think, is a coach on staff at Nebraska. So he's got some good training in his background as well.
Tim, I
I
want to throw to you one more. Will Black pushing for some second string duties. You were very high on him, and obviously with the only caveat of not everybody's Joe Alt guys. Let's not say he's starting yet, but you were really high on Will Black coming in.
Yeah, I wasn't a lone wolf there, so I don't get a whole lot of credit for that. But yeah, I mean, just technique wise, and we talked to Joe Rudolph about it, and it's like why is he playing guard? Because we see there may be a greater need at guard potentially. I mean, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but JB, I heard the exact same thing about Gerby Lambert, and we haven't had an opportunity to see a whole bunch. But number one, he shocked us by being out there in the first practice a couple Thursdays ago, and then just secondly, I tend to keep my eye on him when we're on the field, and I'm looking at the offensive line, and I mean 6'7", 335. I think he looks sensational. I think that and you're right about Absher being a little bit banged up, but that's what camp's all about. Opportunity knocks, you take advantage of it. Not saying that Lambert's going to beat out Absher because there's still time, but it wouldn't be a shock. To me, I mean, almost the quicker you can get Gerby Lambert on the field for you, the better, because I think he's going to be great. He may struggle a little bit early, and maybe Miami's not the exact best place to break in. But I have heard the same thing, and I think he's looked. I'm always impressed when I see him.
Yeah, he moves incredibly well for 6'7", 335. And so you wonder if he does nail down a starting spot there at right guard this year, if that sets him up to then kick out to right tackle a year from now, if Emil Wagner has an NFL decision to make, which is what a lot of scouts expect to happen, is
You know,
that he will have a decision to make.
even if it's Absher, maybe if it's Lambert or Absher, it's the first time high leverage situation. Same for Sullivan Absher too. So I think the real key is they've shown they can decide somebody's better for Miami and somebody's better for the group against Boise State and someone's better for the group going forward against USC in the final 6 games. Joe Rudolph was absolutely masterful doing that last season. I cannot believe it happened like that because I've never seen it work before. Usually when we're replacing people, the line doesn't play well. When you're going, Notre Dame's had to replace people on the lines before. It didn't usually work that well.
Yeah. And Miami's got a defensive tackle transfer from Kentucky that's very good. So those interior linemen will be challenged against Miami. Question from Jay New. There's been a lot of talk and excitement about the defensive ends being more left and right side and less boundary field. Is something like that happening for DBs? Ohio State schemed away from Leonard Moore with Jeremiah Smith. I haven't heard anything about that. That would be Mickens doesn't like to do it. Maybe Ash does. You'd have to come up with some kind of compromise there. I don't know if you guys know anything about that. I haven't heard anything about that.
I included it because I talked to Gray, Mickens, Golden, Moore, and Morrison about this. They all talked about how hard it is.
Yeah.
The funny thing is to me is they do cross train all spring, but that's because the bodies aren't the same and you're learning other positions. Because look, you have to move. At some point, you got to move. For instance, Leonard Moore was Benjamin Morrison's backup. People all think Leonard Moore's first game against Louisville is because Morrison was hurt. It's not. Christian Gray was hurt.
Right.
He was playing opposite Morrison. He actually got beat for his only real touchdown in that game. It was a pretty important one at the end of the game. Moore just said, I felt like a fish out of water. It was so weird playing to the field. I'm sure he'd be better at it now. But even Christian Gray kind of joked. He's like, yeah, he kept coming back. I tried to school him on the sideline. He was having a great game, and he'd be like, man, I don't feel comfortable out there. So I really think it's difficult to do in college. What people just don't get, unlike the NFL, if you're not committing this to memory, is there's a different defensive scheme almost to the strong side field and the boundary. It's just different. You're either right next to the sideline or you're in no man's land open space. It's very difficult to do left, right, and college.
It's got to seem like a vast amount of space.
You got to know what the nickel's doing if you're at the field. You know what I mean? Like the safety is different at the field. It's just harder to play boundary and court. So I don't think you'll see that, especially since they have two really adept guys. I would like to point out, you put anybody at field positioning as Jeremiah Smith, he's going to get picked on. They would have gone to him against Leonard Moore too. It's just, yeah, that's not fair to Christian Gray.
And to that end, probably a good question to note that we know they've installed some zone packages. And we saw them working on that in spring and a little bit even in this camp. So, that's one element that could be different this year.
We have Mickens this week. So we have Mickens. We'll talk to him. That'll be a good question.
We have to do a good job of asking questions with Mike Mickens. Yes. Otherwise, we will fail in our assignment. Question from kind of tied in here with the secondary from CMU Pens fan. Where does Christian Gray have to improve most from last year to this year so that he does not get picked on unmercifully a la Ohio State and USC?
As I said about Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith is a little bit different, and Egbuka is one of the best technical college receivers of the last few years. I don't think it's fair to say anything about Christian Gray's pass coverage against Ohio State. USC surprised all of us. I was really surprised that happened, but Christian Gray got beat by the best skill position player in the country last year on an important play. Christian Gray recognized the other touchdown was coming. He told everybody in the world to shift their defense. Wasn't his fault. His only thought was,
that wasn't on him.
No, he told everybody it was coming, but he had to follow his assignment. That was the problem. The only thing he could not do there would be decide not to follow your assignment, which seems like that would go poorly too.
Look, this there's this notion that corners aren't ever. It's just not realistic, especially Jeremiah Smith. And I love Mekhi Lemon, and he went nuts that day. And my answer to the question is, look, sometimes corners, it's like a hitter that's 0 for 14. Sometimes you get caught in some mental anguish with yourself. And that was my impression of watching Christian Gray against USC. It's like, he's lost a little bit of belief here. And Maeva was doing great and Lemon's great, and they've got receivers all over the place. And he just kind of got caught in the centrifuge for a while. But Christian Gray's a very good college cornerback.
And in
And
the USC game, the pass rush wasn't getting home. I mean, there were a couple of those throws that Maeva just put it on the money. It wasn't necessarily bad coverage by Gray. It was just great execution by USC. And yeah, Jeremiah Smith is going to beat people on Sundays, so it makes sense that he beats people on Saturdays.
the other thing is Leonard Moore's out there with them, so they don't want to go that way.
Yeah.
So you're going to get the volume of tests is going to increase for Christian Gray too.
But I think just real quickly in finishing the answer, I would just say when he does get beat at the line of scrimmage, because he is physical, he likes to play, he likes to get up in the receiver's face. But when he does get beat, just be a little more quicker with his hips to rotate around and run with the receiver.
Notre Dame goes out to you. Speaking of no pass rush at USC, Tim Priester, the last 3 times they went out there, Notre Dame had the better or just as good of a team, but they had no pass rush at USC. And it is not a coincidence. Mike Elston talked to us about it. Al Golden talked to us about it. If they go out there in 2026, everybody be prepared for a tired Notre Dame team, because that's how life works at Notre Dame when you're flying out to the West Coast for your last game against a really good offense.
The other thing was, and I must have said this half a dozen times the week of the USC game, the perception was that USC did not have a good offensive line. I didn't say they had a great line. They had a good line. It wasn't always consistent, but they had a good line, and they got the best of Notre Dame's pass rush that day.
We got a QB related question here. Actually, a double QB related question from Kay Beasley. Is there any real thought in seeing both Minchie and Carr against Miami? If it's closer to 50-50, why not consider revealing a starting QB and having Miami prepare for both? But also related, Indy 11, odds on Coach Marcus Freeman saying both will play in his 8-18 presser. It seems higher than 50-50 to me.
JB.
I would be a little surprised if he comes into the press conference whenever it is, when he decides to name a starter, if he decides to name a starter. If he names a starter, I would be surprised he would say both would play, just because
I feel like he won't name a starter.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because we know this staff offensively doesn't really want to play two quarterbacks. Marcus Freeman has said he doesn't believe that that's a recipe for sustained long-term success. So every indication I think pretty similarly for you guys is that it really is 50-50 right now. This is basically the final week of camp. It's a couple of scrimmages over the course of this week that I think are going to be really telling about how the depth chart's shaking out in a number of spots. But there is still time for one of those guys to go out and win the starting job over the next week or so. They'll have like I said, a couple of scrimmages, and then they usually do a mock game at some point in the stadium that's really just kind of a dress rehearsal walkthrough type deal. So, and then that'll kind of mark the end of camp, and they'll officially pivot to opening game, extended game week preparation.
Yeah, we talked about that, Tim, a couple of weeks ago when I said I think it's going to go to the 18th. That competition's going the 18th, and other ones are, but they're still preparing for Miami. And I know this for a fact because I heard one of the position coaches on Wednesday, when he was giving instruction to one of his players, say he doesn't do that. He lines up over here. He wasn't talking about the scout team you're about to go against.
Right.
He was talking about Miami. So they are preparing. Freeman's innovative in how he does these practices, and he's used to playing really good teams to start his career, even if you count Florida State as a defensive coordinator. So they're preparing for Miami. If you don't have a quarterback yet, you can't name a quarterback. You can't just be like, oh, it's time. It's the 17th.
No, you're absolutely, and that's why it will probably be extended. Look, I'm like everybody else. You go into the preseason, regardless who it is. You're not cheering for anybody per se, but competition's good. For us on the outside looking in, you'd like to hear, okay, one quarterback's taking control of the job, and I think that as a follower of the procedure, you'd like to hear that. Okay, so someone's in charge. He's going to take charge. But competition is good, and I think this really shines very brightly on Kenny Minchie. Kenny Minchie's done a tremendous job since the spring. Somebody brought up the backflip in the blue gold game. Yeah, that's Kenny Minchie saying, "Hey, look at me. I can do this too." Not that is necessarily what you're going to do in a football game, but just to show that, hey, I'm a big time athlete too. And so I think competition is good. I don't necessarily think that this is a bad thing. It's two guys competing. I think it's better for Kenny Minchie because I
Yes,
think that
I was gonna
he
say
had a
me too.
bigger gap to to narrow. I think at least in our mind. So I don't necessarily. I mean, I react to it the same way, but when I dwell upon it, I think, remember what we're doing here. This is big time football, and competition is good. And Marcus Freeman likes competition, maybe more so at other positions than quarterback. But look, it is what it is. Maybe you have two guys that are worthy of being a starting quarterback. I don't
Yeah,
know if
I
that's
think one was
necessarily the
great. I
case,
think one
but
was great. They know who it is right now. I can't imagine it's because both of people have been Joe Montana and John Elway dueling in every practice. But we did also get it, and to that point, we did get a tidbit, and I don't believe it no matter how many times I hear it, but it's possible. Someone asked this on the podcast, and I shot it down. There could be a different quarterback situation for Miami than the rest of the season.
yeah, but I don't, but I don't think he's going to come into the press
Not
conference and say we're
planned. Oh no,
playing
no. The press
both.
conference isn't right. He's not telling us anything. He hasn't named a football player yet on his team. He's not going to tell us necessarily who the starting quarterback
Well, we
is.
haven't talked to him
I
either
mean,
in
the whole
10
first
days, but
practice, you saw my review of 3 seasons. He doesn't name football players during
yeah,
interviews, so he's not
yeah.
going to be too forthcoming.
We have a question from Irish Gambler. What is your level of confidence that the starting quarterback at Miami will be the same one that starts against Boise State?
Mine's low. Can I just throw it out there that it's low? Because there's many reasons why you don't start game 5.
Exactly. I mean, it
So
could be injury, but it's the
it's lower than it
suggestion
was July
here.
30th.
Yeah, the suggestion here is that one's not playing well enough and is replaced by another. It's higher. The percentage of that happening is higher than normal
Higher than July 30th, right?
Well,
in our minds, anyway. Yeah,
let's remember that, after the Northern Illinois game last fall, they openly said that they kind of reopened the quarterback competition that following week on the practice field, and that there was a belief that Steve Angeli might get a chance to start going into Purdue. We heard that talked about it in May when we visited with Marcus Freeman. And so, this is the one play, one life is the mantra. Challenge everything is the mantra. They believe in competition. So yeah, I'm with TO in that if you'd asked me on July 30th or even the 31st after, well, no, not 31st because we saw 3 interceptions, but on July 30th,
That's why I said
I would
30th.
have,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's a good one by you, TO. But July 30th, I would have thought very high likelihood. I do think now, it's wait and see.
Final question. Golden Bluegrass. Some position groups are better equipped to overcome a loss due to injury than others. With that being said, who is the one player on this team where you think, please let's not lose that guy? And he adds a great point. I would have said Ben Morrison last year, and it proved true, but it didn't hurt as much as I would have thought. It didn't prove true. They got better, but yes, Ben Morrison and Leonard Moore would have been a better combination. But yeah, that was okay. That doesn't normally happen, right, Priester? Where you lose the guy we're about to say, and then it just gets better. So
no, I can count on no fingers how many times. Well, one now. I don't know. It's hard to name one. I mean, the position that can ill afford really ill afford a starter being injured is at tight end with Eli Raritan. But I also look, Leonard Moore's great and Jeremiah Love's great. And you've got good players behind them. Don't lose Ashton Craig. Don't lose Ashton Craig at center. Because they're cross trading. Tarek, I guess, has done some good things at center.
Absher was the other one. Yeah.
Absher there. They like they like Heron, the young freshman, but you don't want that. Ashton Craig is hugely significant. They need him to stay healthy. Tim, do you know offhand the last time they had a starting offensive line make it through a season? I started to go back, and then I had a
Yeah,
million
I
other
think
things.
let me think here. Well,
I mean,
JB,
it's
you give
not.
your answer and I'll be able to figure it out, I think.
I mean, when I read this question when you sent the rundown, TO, Ashton Craig was one of the first players that came to mind for me. I would still, I know they're good behind Jeremiah Love, but I would probably have a top three of Ashton Craig, Jeremiah Love, and a Don Schuler. Especially now that we know Kedron Young's done for the year. Aeneas Williams is banged up, as you noted. Jabron Payne has to stay healthy. And Jeremiah Love is basically a consensus preseason All-American. And I'm on record as saying I think he's one of the three most dynamic players in all of college football. So no matter how much we all like Jadarian Price, he's not Jeremiah Love.
Mine goes Love 1, nobody 2 for a point of emphasis, and Ashton Craig 3. I
Meaning
There's a
that's
different it
the
is a
gap
different world
between
out. It's a different world out there with Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Don't want to lose Malachi Fields. That means Micah Gilbert starts. By the way, Cam Williams is the third boundary receiver. Adon Schuler. Don't want to lose Adon Schuler.
Yeah, he would be 4. How's that? Because I have to stick with my
Yeah,
nobody 2.
yeah. And I mean Raritan. The expectations for Raritan are really, really high now. Higher by far than they've ever been for him, partly because of the depth chart. Largely because of the depth chart this year, I guess. But yeah, don't want to say those names too much. Don't want to speak it into truth.
Yeah, I was gonna say 2020, but I forgot they kept losing centers after the Boston College game, so it was not then. Remember they had to go to Lug, and then they went to Corral, and Patterson stayed out, and that was a big deal, actually. I guess that wouldn't have been a big deal considering they played Clemson and Alabama, but Patterson got
There,
hurt after BC, and he didn't play again at
there was
center.
a
So
season during Brian Kelly where they didn't have any
there was.
injuries.
I'm trying to think. I mean, are you looking at some innocuous here like 19, where we forgot everything except the Georgia game and beating Brock Purdy? There's something along those
I don't
lines
think it
where
was then. I don't
no,
think
because
it was
Hainsey
then.
got hurt in
Right.
19 and Bars got hurt in 18. It's probably 7. It was 17. They won the Joe Moore Award and they alternated Kramer and Hainsey at right tackle.
And Hainsey started more games than he was given credit for. It was
Right.
what?
He started half the games, but he's listed as starting 1 or something along
Yeah.
those lines. But they had that was the first. It was McGlinchey and Nelson. Those guys didn't miss. Mustafer, I don't recall him missing a game at center. In fact, he did not.
Mm-mm.
It's humanly possible. Alex Bars missed it. I don't think he did either, though. So that I would. All right, I'm going on a limb. 2017 Joe Moore Award winner. Not going to check. Someone can check for us because we are out of time at Irish Illustrated Insider. But we'll be back Thursday. No practice access until then, so we can entertain some of the Miami focused questions, season long questions, perhaps for that. Unless we have some more depth chart updates and hopefully no injury updates. Until then, for John Bryce of Football Scoop, Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thanks for listening and watching Irish Illustrated Insider.